Hi, my name is Shelly Murder, and welcome to Not Small Talk number 4. Today's podcast is titled, Don't Lock Her Up. And the reason for that is because I went home last weekend from college and I saw all of these anti-Hillary Clinton yard signs that said, like, lock her up, she's a felon, blah, 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 and that's a discussion in itself. But the other reason why it's titled that is because I sort of went to a Hillary Clinton rally yesterday. She came to my university. I didn't even know about it until Sunday, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know, they haven't even advertised her, but yeah, I'm totally gonna go because it's free and I'm a student here and it's on my campus. So I can walk to see Hillary Clinton as she's, running for president, and I didn't want to pass that opportunity up. And so I found an email about the rally, and it said that it would be at our rec center, which if you don't go here at my college, I'm not going to say what my college is. If you really want to figure it out, you can, Google where Hillary has spoken this week. That's fine, but I'm not going to say what it is because I want to keep a little bit of mystery to my life as much as I can. We'll see how long that lasts. But anyway, so the email said it would be the rec center. And if you don't go here, you might be thinking, well, okay, what's wrong with that, Megan? And as someone who does go here, I know that having a huge rally with thousands of people is not a good idea at our rec center because there's no seating at all. So everyone would have to stand, and it's not very big. There's a gym, but there's definitely not enough room for as many people that showed up or would show up when they were planning it. And there's a fucking Mac Center that has enough seating for thousands of people, and they didn't use it. So I don't know the reasoning for that. I don't know if it just wasn't planned very well, but as soon as I got that email and it said it's going to be at the rec center, I knew that it was going to be bad, but should have just trusted my intuition. You know where this is going. So email says that the doors would be open to the people to wait for Hillary to start talking at 12:45 in the afternoon, but she would actually start her speech at 2:45. And I had class at 12:45, and I also didn't want to wait 2 hours. I didn't really think it through, but I don't know. I thought that maybe it was only open to students, and I wouldn't have to worry about waiting in line and whatnot. So me and my friend decided to leave our room at 2 o'clock on the dot, and we arrived at the rec center at 2:15. And when we arrived, we see Trump supporters protesting around the rec center as close as they can get. The police are blocking them, and they're directing traffic and whatnot, and there for security, but there's a lot of Trump supporters protesting with signs saying lock her up, saying that she Benghazi lives matter, and that she's a baby killer because she supports abortion, the right to have an abortion. And they are yelling at me directly. They're not just yelling their cause, they're yelling at me directly and my friend as we're walking up towards the rec center, towards the door. They're calling us baby killers, they're calling us dumbasses, all kinds of names. My friend, who's black, they didn't call her any racial slurs directly, but as soon as they saw her, they were directing more of their attention to her, so she felt really uncomfortable. And we just started walking as fast as we could towards the entrance and trying to just get away from these people. But they had megaphones and just were being terrible people. But we get up towards the entrance and we see that there's a line towards the door, a line snaked and stretched through the parking lot in between cars. There's probably 500 people in line to get into the door. And I was like, I thought the doors open at 12:45. Why is there a line? And I was really confused, but I just walked to the back with my friend, and we really didn't want to wait, but we also really wanted to see Hillary Clinton, so we were going to wait. And we waited for about, if we got there 2:50. Okay, we waited for 15 minutes. 2:30 comes around, and we were all the way in the back of the parking lot, and we made our way pretty close to the front door. We were thinking that we were getting ready to get let inside. And then these cops come out and talk to us and everyone around us, and they say that they aren't letting anybody else in the building because it's full, and Hillary has just started her speech at 2:30 instead of 2:45 as planned. Me and my roommate are pretty pissed off, to be honest. For a lot of reasons, but the main one being that we're students here at the college that Hillary was speaking at. We're students. We go to the rec center all the time. It just felt kind of wrong that non-students were given priority over us because those people had literally waited in line all day, not just at 12:45 before that. I saw like tents and chairs and water bottles stashed in the bushes from when people had been waiting that long to see Hillary Clinton. And I mean, I don't think I would do that, number one, but number two, I wouldn't even have the ability to do that because I go to class. I can't just skip class to go see Hillary Clinton. I have to go to class. I'm paying a lot of money to be here. So I figured that students would get a little bit more of a priority knowing that we can't just miss class to wait in line for 2 hours. It's just not possible. So I was a little let down in that respect. And the protesters yelling rude things to us the entire time as we waited in line and walked up to the door, that wasn't fun either. It really wasn't. I mean, it's their right, they're allowed to, but they were just hitting some low balls, I felt, but whatever. Enough about that. What's worse is right behind me in line was a 92-year-old woman in a wheelchair who RSVP'd to see Hillary Clinton. I guess they paid a little extra money or something. And the cops wouldn't even let them in. The woman and her son pushing her in the wheelchair. They wouldn't even let them in. And it's like, come on. She's 92 years old. She's in a wheelchair. Like, you're not going to let her in? God, I know with police and with those situations, if you let one person in, you got to let everybody in. But I would have been fine with it. I would have been like, yeah, let the old lady in. I don't need to go meet Hillary Clinton. She's going to die soon. And I know that's kind of mean, but it's not small talk. But that's what I was thinking. I don't know about anybody else in line, but I wouldn't care if the 92-year-old woman skipped ahead of all of us and got to go in, because she's, to me, being that old, you have a priority. Like, you should be prioritized over everyone else because you don't have as long of time on this earth as the rest of us do. I don't know why I have to explain that, because some people really don't get it, but you should be nice to your elders, kids. But besides that, they didn't get to go in. Us students, who were most of the people in line that got turned away, were students. All of us students couldn't go in because we had classes early that day and we couldn't wait all day to get inside. And so we all were angry and disappointed, and we just kind of harumphed and started walking back to our dorms on campus. And as we were walking back, there was a really frightening male Trump supporter that had a open carry gun on his hip and had a bullhorn and was yelling directly at me and my friend about basically calling us dumbass millennials who are supporting a baby killer, supporting a felon. And he was acting like she was a convicted felon, number one. I'm pretty sure he called her a convicted felon, which is wrong. I don't know where he got that information, but okay. But it was just a horrible experience. to be honest. It wasn't good. Doesn't mean that I don't support Hillary Clinton anymore, because, like, why would I not? But it was a really big disappointment, and I wish that her event planners and maybe Kent State's planners did a little bit better about thinking about how many people would actually show up, and I really would have appreciated it if they gave students priority, but, you know, hindsight's 2020, can't do anything about it now. So hopefully next time at another university, if they're doing any more rallies before the election, they think about it a little more, because damn, that was not good. But to brilliantly segue from a white trash redneck calling Hillary Clinton a convicted felon, let's actually talk about convicted felons. And what we're going to talk about that is relatives to the situation is felons voting. What do we think about it? What does it mean? Because I didn't even know until I was, 18, that felons can't vote. In certain situations, not in every situation, but in certain states and situations, felons can't vote. And a lot of people, especially my hometown, are like, yeah, felons shouldn't be allowed to vote. Why? They're convicted felons. If they wanted to vote, they shouldn't have done the crime in the first place. Well, let's look into that a little bit. So all of my information is from the National Conference of State Legislators website, with the link's going to be in the description if you want to check it out. So throughout most of the United States, felons cannot vote while incarcerated. It's always been at least that way, except for a couple of states, and we'll talk about them later. But throughout most of the 50 states in D.C., if you're a felon, if you're a convicted felon and you're in prison or jail, you can't vote while you're in prison or jail. And the practice of doing this, having these laws, dates back to ancient Greece, really, where taking away the right to vote from felons was a punishment. And it is today, but it was a really big punishment, because in our country and in any democracy, in any country, having the right to vote is the biggest right that you can have. Because believe it or not, politicians, people in political office, have so much power over your life and what you're capable of achieving. You can have a politician, for example, that, in my situation, for young people, that puts more money in the budget for education and funds public colleges, public universities more, so that we don't have to pay as much for tuition and more people can go to school and get out of school with less debt. Or you can have a politician that takes away money from public universities and doesn't fund them as much, where more students have to take on debt and more students can't go to college. So just in that respect, politicians do make a difference in our everyday lives. They really do. So not being able to vote for someone to be in political office is a punishment. It's a huge punishment. So ancient Greece, Europe, even up through colonial America, if you were a convicted felon whatsoever, whether you were in prison or not, you could not vote. Now in the US, over the years, we've made it to where in every state across the US, you can, if you're a felon, in some way you can vote after you get out of prison. And we'll go in more depth after that, but like, it's not to the point of where for the rest of your life, if you're a felon, you can't vote. It's possible to vote after you get out of prison in every state. And what this is called is felon voting disenfranchisement. So 38 out of the 50 states in DC give felons the right to vote back immediately after completing their sentence. So once they're done with prison, done with probation, parole, they can get their right to vote back immediately. While there are a couple of other states, too, which are Maine and Vermont, sorry, I had to scroll through my script a little bit. Maine and Vermont give felons the right to vote back immediately after release from incarceration. So immediately after felons get out of prison or jail, they can vote. They don't have to they don't have to wait for probation to be over. They can vote while they're on probation. Only those two states do that, though, Maine and Vermont. And then the rest of states don't even give the right to vote back immediately after finishing your sentence. You have to go through the court or the governor. The court or the governor of your state has to tell you it's okay for you to vote. They have to write it in paper that it's okay for this individual felon to vote. You can't just go to the voting registration office as a felon and say, hey, I completed my sentence, I'll need to register for vote. You have to get permission from the governor or the court, which is a lengthy process, and about 8 to 10 states do that. So that's a lot of people that are affected by that. Okay, so the majority of states restore voting rights after sentence completion, immediately after sentence completion. But just because those voting rights are restored doesn't mean that they can vote like the rest of us. Because for the rest of us, if you're not a convicted felon, at age 18, you can go register to vote, either online or at your voting office, and you're fine. You're ready to vote. All you do is fill out one little paper, put your driver's license on it, your social security number, you're ready to go. But with felons, in a lot of those 38 states, when they have to go back to register to vote, they have to go through a lot more red tape than we do. They have to talk about what crime it was that they were convicted for, at which they may be denied the right to vote for that, or when the crime was committed, which could be a reason to deny their right to vote. And on top of that, they have to go through multiple state agencies to get registered. It's not just for the rest of us. If you go to the registration office, you can get registered that same day. For convicted felons, they have to go through 3-4 different state agencies who have to do background checks over that felon's crimes and, talk about if they want to give that felon the right to vote or not. And it can take years. And on top of that, for felons just to get parole takes years because so many states don't fund their parole boards. So they're understaffed, and felons who have applied for parole and are ready to go in front of a parole board to be given parole have to wait for years because there aren't enough people working to get through all of the felons that we have in prison that are applying for parole. So you can wait for years to get parole, and then once you do, you can go, you're like, okay, I'm ready to vote now, I can vote, and then you go to the voter registration office, and they're like, well, what crime did you commit, when did you commit it, all that, etc., a bunch of different information just than that. Those are just 2 examples. Then they have to send it to 2 other agencies who have to approve it, and then it all has to get back if they don't lose the paperwork, and then you can vote. And after all of that, I mean, it's been what now? 5-10 years, maybe more? That's not a right. They may be able technically to vote, but they really can't, and that's not fair. Constitutionally, you can't deny somebody the right to vote based on their past servitude. And to me, a convicted felon could fall under that. I think so. There isn't really anything in the Constitution about convicted felons having the right to vote or not having the right to vote. And I think they fall under the 15th Amendment, but that's just me. So, being curious about convicted felons voting, I wanted to see how the rest of America thinks about it. And I had a hypothesis about what America would think about it, and I was actually surprised. I looked up a poll on MSNBC about felon voting rights to see what the rest of America thought about the issue, and I was actually really surprised. 56% of Americans feel that felons should be allowed to vote once their sentence is completed, while 25% feel that felons should never be allowed to vote, no matter what, and 16% feel that felons should be allowed to vote no matter what, even during incarceration. In other words, a high majority of Americans feel that felons should at least be allowed to vote once their sentence is completed. And that was so surprising to me, because where I'm from, everyone talks about convicted felons like they're the worst of the worst and they don't deserve any rights, and that prisoners are already treated, too well as it is, and they don't deserve the right to vote. But that's not the case, apparently, for the rest of the United States. I guess my hometown is just a piece of shit and everyone else is okay, so we're not all bad, Canada. That's all I have to say about that. Alright, so once again, the link for that information about felon voting rights will be in the description. Go check it out. And our public service announcement, also about prisoners, is tuberculosis is in the United States, believe it or not. Yeah, tuberculosis. I'm sure people who know about that disease are like, what, Megan? No, it's true. All of my information comes from the CDC website. Here we go. So tuberculosis, or TB for short, is an infectious disease, highly infectious disease, that affects 1/3 of the world population, but only 9,421 people in the United States as of last year. So TB is a disease that the US used to deal with back when we were first being industrialized, but through better hygiene and vaccines, we have fought against it, and now it's not a problem at all here anymore, considering that our population is, 3 billion, and only 9,000 people have TB. It's not seen as an issue here, or that it even exists at all. Whereas in the rest of the world, mostly lesser developed countries, TB is a killer. It is something that, especially for HIV/AIDS patients, but getting TB is scary because it is a highly fatal disease and painful. It can cause really bad coughing to the point of where you can cough up blood. It can cause really bad chest pain, fever, weight loss, and a lack of appetite. And you mix all those things together and you get a fatality, which is terrible. And it's so fatal that it kills hundreds of thousands of people every year. And like I said, that's mostly in lesser developed countries. TB really isn't an illness that one thinks of in the United States, at least not for me and most public health people. When you think of killer illnesses in the United States, you think of heart disease, you think of cancer, you don't think of tuberculosis. So why are we talking about it, is probably what you're asking. Or why is it here at all? And the answer is that the majority of people with TB in the US are in prison, which is sad because prisoners are considered a vulnerable population, according to public health experts and the World Health Organization. And vulnerable populations must be protected. When it comes to disease, they are at the forefront of priority for protection against disease because, as the name suggests, they're vulnerable. They're more susceptible to disease and death from disease than the rest of the population. So why are prisoners having TB while the rest of us aren't? And the reason is because correctional facilities just aren't focused on the health of their inmates. They never really have been. It's better today than it used to be, but it's still bad. And the reason for that is because Americans don't care about prisoners. We really don't, as a whole. If you're in prison, you're not at the front of our mind whatsoever. And if you are, we're thinking about how you're treated a lot better than you should be. Which, to me, isn't fair or informed for Americans to think, because to me, being hospitalized from a completely preventable and painful disease is not being treated better than the average American. It really isn't. So to me, not being hospitalized from TB or even dying from TB is a human right, especially for prisoners who are a vulnerable population. So if you talk to somebody who thinks that prisoners are being treated too well, give them this tidbit of information. Maybe you'll enlighten them a little bit. All right. So now we are in the last section of today's podcast, titled "The World's Oldest Person Eats Something Very Gross Every Day." Again, not much to go with, but this story is from the Huffington Post, and the world's oldest human being is Emma Morano. She's Italian and is 116 years old, soon to be 117 at the end of November. And apparently her secret trick to her old age is eating 2 raw eggs every day. She eats 2 raw eggs every day for breakfast. Apparently from decades ago when her doctor told her that she has anemia and she needed to prevent herself from being anemic, so she started eating eggs every day, raw eggs every day. And it might also be because she's a masochist, because fuck, raw eggs are disgusting. I'm sorry, lady. I doubt you'll ever hear this, but congrats to you for living to be 116 years old. But damn, raw eggs? Isn't there something easier? I feel like iron is in every meat, or in kale too. So if you're afraid of having low iron, which is what anemia is, you could eat chicken, beef, kale, spinach. There are other things to do besides eating raw eggs, and I don't know how you could do it for decades now. I mean, when you're 116 and you've eaten raw eggs for decades, I'm sure it doesn't taste as bad as it used to. It probably doesn't taste like anything. But at the beginning, I couldn't imagine. I really couldn't. Apparently she likes cookies as well, so, I mean, that's cool. But, so that's that. I can't tell you that eating raw eggs will make you any healthier or make you live any longer or be any prettier, but I can tell you that subscribing will. Subscribing to my channel will make you pretty, it'll make you healthy, hopefully it'll make you laugh. So subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed this podcast. I had an amazing time, and I hope you have an amazing, fantastic day, and thanks for listening.